Hi everyone, we're back again to the second of 5 portions of the class. We're going to do chapters 5, 6, and 7, talking about motivation, performance management, and stress. So chapter 5 is motivation, chapter 6 is learning and performance management, and chapter 7 is stress and well-being. So let's first start out with motivation at work. You might want to ask yourself, why is it that you go to work every day? Some people go just to make money. Some people go because they're trying to advance their career. Some people go because they truly, truly enjoy the work. So let's get started. Motivation is the process of arousing and sustaining goal-directed behavior. So keeping motivated. And essentially there's 3 theories of motivation: internal, process, and external. Things within yourself that will encourage you to work. Need for money, that kind of thing. Process is the actual being there, the idea that you really enjoy the work itself. And external are things that external rewards. Okay, there are 4 motivational theorists. Max Weber, spelt Weber, but said Weber. It's his idea of the Protestant work ethic that says that, working hard is what you're supposed to do and it's going to get you to a good afterlife. Sigmund Freud, who some of you, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Freud, or at least the name of Freud. And if you've taken psychology yet, you've probably talked about him. He's basically focused on everything that has to do with love and attention and all that kind of thing, our need for social interaction. Adam Smith believed that, talk about Adam Smith and the invisible hand, that it's people only work for money. That's all we're interested in. And then finally, Frederick Taylor, who talks about there's a important relationship between management and the worker to get things going. The 2 groups together are responsible to work together to create motivation. Okay, so here we go. Maslow's need hierarchy. I'm sure you've seen it before. We talk about it in marketing. You also talk about it in psychology as well. So it's this idea, Maslow's need hierarchy is that we have these 5 levels of need: physiological, which is like air, food, water; safety and security needs; love and social needs in terms of acceptance and interpersonal interaction; esteem needs, feeling good about ourselves; and then self-actualization is, reaching our true potential and being what we can, doing the best we can. Excuse me. So one thing about Maslow's need hierarchy is there's a way that management can respond to it. So physiological needs, as I said, air, food, and water. A lot of times you'll see in most workplaces, and I know that there's most workplaces, including at ECC, and I'm sure many of the places that you all work or have worked, they'll have an on-site cafeteria, for example. It's to provide for a physiological need because you need to eat, right? So if you're not going to be eating, you're not going to be able to move on to any other levels. If you can't, so the idea with this, you can't move on to the next level until you satisfy the needs of the level before. So physiological needs, and also just providing a safe workplace. Next are safety and security needs, feeling safe in the workplace, and also long-term security. So there's a basic level in terms of providing a safe work environment. And then the other side of it too is, people want safety in terms of good salaries and retirement plans and that kind of thing. Love and social needs in the workplace, provided through, maybe there's a company softball team, and then you all go out for a beer afterwards. Or maybe there's, you have an annual Christmas party or an annual summer party. Opportunity for people a break room where people can socialize during the day at work. That kind of thing. Esteem needs, feeling good about yourself. So you see things like Employee of the Month awards and outstanding associates and that kind of thing. And self-actualization needs is this idea that giving people tasks or assignments that meet all their skills, and helping people exercise their best selves. Okay, so now we come to the idea of theory X and theory Y. We're going to talk about, I have a couple of slides on this, so we're going to kind of go through. But essentially theory X is that is people are lazy, and unless the management cracks the whip, they're not going to do anything. Theory Y is more this idea that it's a joint venture between management and the worker. That unless the management, so theory X is that people are lazy. Theory Y says no, people aren't lazy. People really do have this internal need to succeed and create things and be successful, and the only reason that they're not is because they've had bad experiences with management. And so until management gives people an opportunity to excel, they're not going to excel. Okay, so theory X, theory Y, set of assumptions of how to manage individuals who are motivated by lower order needs. Those lower order needs were the physiological and the safety that we saw. And theory X is that higher order needs. Okay, so this is a little bit more detail of that slide before. Mrs. McGregor's assumption based on theory X, naturally indolent, which means lazy. They lack ambition. They don't like responsibility. They want to be led. They're self-centered. They have no organizational commitment. They don't like change. They're not very smart. This is not a good picture of a person, right? But theory X is, some managers have this idea. Theory Y, that it's not inherent, meaning it's not within people. It's not natural for people to be resistant and passive. It's only because they've had so many bad organizational experiences that they're just like, oh, forget it. Like, I tried that before. It just never works. Like, management is terrible. But what people possess is this motivation. They want to grow. They want to take on responsibility. And they really want to help with people's organizational needs. Okay, so let's take a look at, there's also the ERG theory, which is existence, relatedness, and growth. That basically we're again looking at the Maslow's need hierarchy, and at the bottom is just simply existence, which is safety and the physiological needs, and then relatedness is this idea of love and esteem needs that we talked about these a couple slides ago, and then ultimately growth, which through self-actualization. So that's the ERG theory. It's the same. It's modeled after Maslow's need hierarchy. It just groups them a little bit differently. It also says that you can move back and forth between them, which is probably a more accurate look at things. That people do move back and forth. You might be completely self-actualized, but then all of a sudden, something happens. You have some physiological need. It doesn't mean that you haven't reached that level. It just means that you kind of move back and forth between them. All right, so moving on, we have a new theorist here. That is McClelland, and it's this idea that there are three categories of needs that people fall into: achievement, power, and affiliation. And we're going to look at them one by one. Okay, need for achievement is that people who have a need for achievement are really very competitive. They like challenging goals. They don't give up. They just don't give up. People who have a need for power want to be able to influence other people and make a difference in people's lives. And then finally, a need for affiliation is this idea that they want to be able to maintain warm and close relationships with other people. That the relationship is more important than anything else. So when thinking about this, so you want to think about yourself. Again, this class is about managing yourself and others in the workplace and being able to better understand what goes on and why it goes on. Then also, really, I hope that you take a lot of these things and think about, what kind of job you might like. Even if you might be already working full time, is this the best job for you? Or how could you tailor your job to make you happier? And to go back to get to that top level of Maslow's need hierarchy in terms of self-actualization. So you look at these different needs. People who have need for achievement, you might want to give them on some really difficult task. People who have need for affiliation would probably be really good with customer service, and they may or may not be good at sales. Power is something that people need for power, that Power is a kind of a scary thing, but let's go back for a second. This idea for the need for power, that you want to impact others. So if you do have a need for power, maybe you want to work maybe in a nonprofit organization, or have opportunities to help do management development, or personal development with other workers, that kind of thing. Okay, and that need for affiliation. Again, a lot of times you could say managers, although managers sometimes do have to make hard decisions. They also want to keep people happy. So there's no really one way, like how do you go one way or the other. That these are all things that motivate people, and some people sort of like a sliding scale. Okay, this is from the book. It just gives you an idea of all the different, encapsulates everything on a chart for higher order needs, lower order needs, and then how they work out. McGregor, Alderfer, which is ERG. McGregor is theory X, theory Y. Alderfer is ERG. And then McClelland is this idea about the three needs: achievement, power, and affiliation. And those are all higher order needs that it's really kind of like blows this whole theory X out of the water, saying, yeah, well, that's taken care of. But once people reach this level, they have these other more complicated needs. Okay, speaking of that, we are moving on to another theory, which is Herzberg's two-factor theory. That essentially that there are hygiene factors and motivation factors. Both stick with work conditions, but they address different types of people's experiences with it. So let's take a look here. Okay, hygiene factors should be things that, in order to avoid job dissatisfaction, you have to be happy with the company policy administration. You have to be happy with your supervisor. You have to have positive interpersonal relationships. You have to have good and safe working conditions. You have to have a good salary, to be able to support yourself and your family if you have one. There needs to be some level of status that reaches the esteem needs, and then security, like that you need to have some level of security in terms of job security, or in other areas you need to have the benefits of health insurance, or a retirement plan. So essentially, unless the idea of job dissatisfaction, unless those things are met, you're going to be dissatisfied with your job. Now, motivation factors, on the other hand, are the things that increase job satisfaction. So these hygiene factors, that's the minimum bar. Having those things is the only way you're going to avoid job dissatisfaction. Well, motivation factors, on the flip side of it, are things that increase job satisfaction. So achievement and recognition, which goes back to that esteem issue. The work itself, which is the idea of the process, that you really enjoy doing the job that you do. A level of responsibility, opportunity for advancement and growth. Now, salary, I have a question mark next to salary, because salary is one of those things when you interview people, and there's been lots of studies done, over and over again, salary is not the number one thing that people are interested in a job. You'll often hear, sometimes you might hear a phrase called the golden handcuffs, that people sometimes stay in jobs because of the salary and benefits, but that's not necessarily always what makes people happy. You could have a great salary, but be very unhappy in your job because you don't get along with your supervisor, or because you don't agree with company policy, that kind of thing. So anyway, salary is one of those things that kind of floats back, and salary isn't necessarily always a motivating factor. It doesn't always create job satisfaction. It can be important, but it's not vital. All right, so the critique of Herzberg, for example, that might not be necessarily completely motivation or hygiene with the salary. It doesn't take into account things for individual differences. So, for example, someone who is just starting out in their career, such as, if you're in your 20s, and so maybe you're gaining great job experience, but you don't really agree with the company policies, but you're really getting some great job experience, and you have to just dig in and do it for a couple of years to get that, on your resume. It doesn't really, that doesn't necessarily, it doesn't account for that. And some intrinsic job factors, things that are just part of the job itself, in terms of the reward or the prestige, whatever. And then this whole idea that there might be unknown or out of the ordinary events that occur that might change people's opinions. Okay, let's moving on. This whole idea of and motivation in the workplace. These are some new ideas. This idea of eustress, which is a positive, healthy stress, and it's this idea that it kind of goes back to some of the things we're talking about in the previous chapters about self-monitoring and emotional intelligence, that kind of thing. That yes, there is stress, but there's this whole idea of good stress that um, we're able to control our response to it. Okay, and then there's other new ideas: positive energy and full engagement. It's that people. It's this idea of the intrinsic that people are motivated by their own needs, their own their own internal strengths, mental abilities, emotional stamina, their level of spirituality, their physical stamina, not necessarily by unmet needs. That we have these things that there is this whole idea of positive energy within ourselves that can help us to become motivated in the workplace, even though the situation might not be optimal. And this whole idea that it's very important that we can have our own energy recovery, that we can, it's up to us to make ourselves happy. Whoops, I think I skipped one. Nope, my mistake. Sorry. Okay. Social exchange and equity theory. Equity theory is this idea that there's things that the social processes, that means our interaction with other people and the environment itself, that influence our motivation. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. Okay, so I don't know how well you can see that. Well, I'm sure you can see it when you download your notes. So there's the organization of the individual, and then there's what's demanded upon you by yourself and what you contribute, and is there equality among that, or between those things? So, for example, the individual is contributing their knowledge, but the organization in return has to give them commensurate objectives and tasks. And the organization is contributing things like the benefits, the income, but the individual, in the meantime, there are demands in order to get that company status, the benefits, the income. They need to put something in too. Okay, this whole idea of inequity. So people are motivated when they find themselves in a situation of inequity or unfairness. So this idea that people look for their income, their inputs. Do their inputs equal their outputs? So this idea that, okay, so you start a job and you say, oh, well, I've got this degree and I've been working here for 10 years and I get X salary and X vacation days, but now this new person's come in and they might not have the same degree and they have less experience, but they're making more money. Like, is that fair or not fair? Well, maybe it is fair because maybe that person has a level of experience that you don't have. So it's this idea people are, when it's like motivated by inequity, they want to strive harder. Or they might be motivated to walk out the door. Okay, so there's equity, negative equity, and positive equity. Equity is that everything's equal. They feel like what they're putting in, they're getting the equal amount out. Negative equity is that what the person is the outcomes are less than their comparison other. That is the person who's at the same level. And the positive equity is that they feel that they're getting more out of it than someone at a similar level. And it could be measured in income, it could be measured in vacation time, it could be measured in benefit status, it could be measured in the variety of work that you do, the challenge of the work that you do, the prestige of the work that you do. How people measure it is as different as each person is to each other. Okay, so the thing is that you want to talk about how do you resolve inequity. You can change what goes on either on the side of the person or the side of the individual or the other person, the individual or the person who they're being compared to. Change who's used as their comparison other, somehow give a reason for why there's an inequity, or you can leave the organization. So it's either change yourself, change the other, um, or completely change the other's activities, change your activities, change the other person that you're being compared to, figure out a way to rationalize why it is. Well, maybe this person is making more because they have more experience. Maybe because they've had different experiences and this is where the company's going. And, let's say it's an agricultural company and you've been there for 10 years and maybe this person comes in, there's new technology and they have information and skills in an area that this company now needs. So you can rationalize it that way. Or you just leave. Always an option if you can find another job. Okay, so there's also new perspectives on this whole idea of equity theory. So idea of equity sensitive. I want to be equal to that of my comparison other. Benevolent is that it's okay with me that I get less than someone else who's at the same level that I am. Or you could also feel like you're entitled, that hey, I don't, so I'm getting paid more than that person, and I have a lower degree and less experience, but that's okay with me. I deserve it. Okay, now there's this whole idea of expectancy theory. It's what is it that people what's their expectation when they start a job? They also often talk about it as the psychological contract, in terms of what's the psychological contract that you have with the company? What is it that you've been promised? It's not written, but that you anticipate is going to happen. Okay, so two basic notions of expectancy theory. People expect certain outcomes of behavior and performance. If I get to work on time every day, I complete my reports on time, and I go to my meetings, this is what I expect to have happen. And people also believe that the effort they put forth, the amount of time they put in, the effort they put in, the creativity, is related to the performance and the outcome that they receive. So that there is actually that inputs should in fact equal outputs. So there's some people. So I don't know. You could talk about all sorts of different professions. And again, this is also often very personal as to what people. Everyone has different tolerance levels and what people expect. So, as a manager, you need to be sensitive to what the expectations of your employees are, and as an employee, you need to be sensitive to yourself to understand what it is exactly you're looking for. Okay, some more things about expectancy theory. There's valence, expectancy, and instrumentality. So the idea of valence is how much importance do you put on it. Now, some people might really value an increase in pay. Some people might really value, getting a better office. Some people might really value, having an opportunity for an advancement or whatever it may be. And some things just aren't important. So, just because for you maybe getting an office to yourself is really important, for that other person, it's not that important. So you might be competing for something that the other person doesn't care about. And so you might get the office and feel really great about that. And the other person's like, big deal. I don't care. Maybe what that person is looking for is more, a higher salary or more vacation time or, a chance to, have preferred parking or something like that. So there's balance. How much value do you actually place on the reward? And there's nothing right or wrong, and every situation is different. Every job situation is different. Okay, expectancy. This idea that you're going to put effort in and you're going to get the performance back. And then also instrumentality is this idea that performance is actually related to rewards. And in some situations, it just isn't. So these are all things that with expectancy people think about: valence, expectancy, and then instrumentality. Okay, so 3 causes of motivational problem. A belief in effort that the belief that the effort's not going to result in performance, so you just kind of give up on it, or that performance won't result in rewards, and also this idea that the value that people places on that the person places on, or the preference a person has for certain rewards. So it kind of goes back to the this idea that we were talking about theory X and theory Y, and in theory Y that it's incumbent upon the organization and the individual to keep people positive. That okay, so maybe you did work on a project and you put a lot of time into it, and the project didn't work out. Well, it's up to the company to explain. Well, sometimes the manager, whatever, sometimes it doesn't work out that way, and next time it will. So it's this idea of like, do you feel defeated or not feel defeated? Okay, so moral maturity. Moral maturity is this idea that there's this cognitive moral development. We talked about that last time. And I think it was in the last chapter, in chapter 4. So morality is connected to motivation. Morally mature people behave and act based on universal ethical principles, whereas morally immature people behave on more egocentric motivation. So the morally mature person is thinking about for the greater good for all, for the company, for the community. And then morally immature people are more interested in like, well, hey, what's in it for me? Like, what am I getting out of this? I don't really care about the company. All of these things are, they're all intertwined. And we go back, this is really, we're going to see this over and over again, how the ideas of the class layer one on top of each other. And again, this is when we get into things like, the personality and people's perceptions and the perceptual screen and how good of a self-monitor someone is and the level of emotional intelligence and all those kinds of things. So, and moral development, plays a role in that, is to, and also people's experience on the job and that kind of thing. So, this idea of moral maturity, people who have moral maturity are interested in the greater good. People who are morally immature, generally speaking, are just interested in themselves. Okay, and then just a few important notes here. There's motivational theories that are we've been talking about today are developed by and about Americans. So we talked, remember, about Hofstede's 5 cultural levels of culture, cultural indicators. That these might, we live in an individualistic culture. So some of these theories of people in a collectivist culture might not be the same. The results might not be able to deal adequately with cultural differences, really is kind of the bottom line. It's the thing to keep important. Sometimes it will, but sometimes it doesn't. It also is a way, if you do work for a company that's global, to better understand how these different motivation theories would play out in different countries or in different cultures. Okay, so that's it for chapter 5. We talked about motivation, and the slides are posted, and as always, if you have any questions, please contact me. Thanks.